What's up? Welcome back to the what do we even call this again? The SNS College Football Pod or something like that. First pod of the year, 2019. First things first. We said last year that we were going to do some playoff pods. We didn't do that. I actually think there were a few different pods we were going to do at the end of the year, but we just didn't do it. I don't
Everyone
remember.
got distracted with Christmas and
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
life in general. So apologies for that. We're going to try to do better this year as far as that's concerned. It's not. I think some of the viewers would think that because half or even more than that, because Tolman's like a big part of it now. 3/5 of the pod is Ohio State fans, so it's not because Alabama and Clemson are like in the playoffs. That's not why we didn't do a pod. We just got busy. It's whatever. Even though we do hate those football teams.
Yep, but we love college football, so.
But we love college football.
Whoever's in the playoff, I mean, we're gonna want to talk about it.
And so we're back though, and we are starting with tradition somehow is to start with the Pac-12 conference. We're doing our conference previews in the off season here, and I think it's because we like to make fun of the Pac-12.
Yeah.
The last
It's so far away.
Yeah,
it feels like a different country.
It's California's pretty much a different country, so like that's a lot of the teams, and the Pac-12 the last like 2 to 3 years has been really bad, and so it's kind of our way to like make fun of them, get the worst thing out of the way first, so we can talk about the best stuff later. But this year, it could be a little different. The Pac-12 actually seems like it's a pretty competitive conference, and it might even have a couple teams that could be considered playoff contenders. So let's start with. I don't even remember what we were going to start with. I don't remember where my phone's at. I know we were going to do the apology thing, and
last year.
Oh yeah, we got to recap last year.
Yeah.
Well, we were going to do. So let's recap last year. I'll let you start.
Okay.
Champion, like surprise teams, disappointing teams.
Yeah, last year Washington won the conference. Second year in a row, Pac-12 did not get a team in the playoff, and the thing about it is, not only did they not get a team in, but they really weren't a threat to get a team into the playoff the entire season, which is why the last couple of years of Pac-12 football have been, pretty big disappointment.
Right.
Out of all the major conferences the last 2 years, they're the only one that really hasn't been in the playoff discussion at the end of the year. Yeah. So obviously they're really going to want to be doing a lot better than they've done the past couple of years.
Yeah, for sure.
Washington winning the conference. USC had a really bad year.
Yeah, they weren't good. Clay Helton sucks. Washington State surprise. They won 11 games. Mike Leach, again, proving that he's just a good coach. They brought in transfer Gardner Minshew, the mustache. He was a Heisman contender at the end of the year. Interesting, was it the Apple Cup was the Snow Bowl? Or like the Thunder Snow game that we were watching? But yeah, so I mean, clearly, like we said, this conference hasn't been I think nationally elite. They haven't had quite elite teams the last.
Yeah, it hasn't really been nationally relevant.
Yeah,
as far as the playoff goes. So.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, obviously, like we said though, I guess kind of foreshadowing. We think that possibly could be different this year. We'll see when we get into the preview.
There are a lot of second year coaches, so there are a lot of teams who could take a step forward. So we'll see what happens with those teams.
Yeah, speaking of coaching changes, so last year when we did the Pac-12 pod, obviously if there are a lot of second-year coaches, there were a lot of first-year coaches.
Yeah, it was like half the conference last year had new coaches.
This year we just have one. We got Mel Tucker at Colorado. Mel Tucker's been known in the industry as a very good defensive coach. Coached at a lot of different good schools, coached in the NFL. He's taken over Colorado. Going to be a tough first year for him, I think.
Probably.
Colorado's got a very tough schedule. They're also lacking a little bit on talent. But yeah, just the one coaching change. So do you think, let's go with, is Mel Tucker going to be there in 3 years?
I don't know.
I mean, that's the first question I have. Yeah. Like, is he going to be there? How good are they going to be? I think he's going to be there. I actually think they're going to be decent. Yeah.
I think a lot of those teams in that division especially are pretty close together.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's a lot of turnover in that division. Like we've seen. Here's the thing about the Pac-12 South. The last 7 years, every team in the division has won the division.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And no one's repeated. So it's easy to go from the bottom to the top in this division. So it makes it one of the more interesting divisions like that in the ACC Coastal.
Yeah.
They don't
joke.
right, they don't have elite teams, but they're interesting division races.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. So I think that's a pretty good transition into now our 2019 preview. We're going to start with the South Division, and we're going to go team by team. Certain teams are going to take a little longer to preview because we just care about them more because they're relevant. Teams like Colorado, sorry Mel Tucker, we're not going to really talk about you much, but we'll start with the Utah Utes. And by all accounts, this team this year is definitely, I would say, probably like a co-favorite in the Pac-12 from what I've seen. Like we've seen the odds change based on like what book you look at, but a team that brings back a lot on defense, possibly the best defensive line in the country, and then on offense, I think it's debatable how good you think they'll be, but they do bring back their quarterback and their running back, who both were very productive last year. How do you feel about Utah? I think we'll just go through like overall talent level, their schedule. Where do you place them, I guess, in the South?
They're one of the teams that's going to be competing for the division. I think it's between them and USC, really. Mm-hmm. One of the best defensive teams in the conference. Offensively, they're pretty good. You mentioned the quarterback and running back injuries.
Yeah, Tyler Huntley, Zach Moss.
Both of them were hurt for like half the conference season last year, and they still won the division, so that's huge. And then getting those guys back, hopefully healthy for the full season,
right? They'll
be even better, you would think. And they could also, have some more depth than they did last year too. I really like the D line. It should be one of the best D lines in the country, and this program seems to always turn out good D lines too. They always get a lot of sacks, and that's going to be like the key of their defense this year too.
It's interesting that they get all those like Samoan kids.
Yeah, they get a lot of them. They go to Utah.
And something else too that's I think actually a very underrated part of this team is that Whittingham's a good head coach, but they're always elite on special teams. Yeah. And that's where I think in close games that like matters a lot.
Home field, they always have a good home field advantage too.
It's tough to play in Salt Lake City. You got altitude, you got a pretty raucous environment, I guess. But yeah, as he mentioned, defensive line. I don't really know how to pronounce some of these names. I think it's Lakai Fotu or Fodu, and then Bradley Anai or Anay, whatever they are. Yeah, they're both very, very elite. That D line overall, a lot of depth, a lot of talent.
They bring back all four starters on the D line.
Yeah,
they were really good against the run.
Yeah.
Their sack numbers were down from what they typically do, but with everyone back, I expect those numbers to go up. Yeah. And like we said, usually they get elite play out of those guys anyway.
I think the big thing with this team is that if they are going to truly be a playoff contender, I think the O-line needs to come together and be really strong, and then I think that's going to help the offense a lot. I think disclaimer, like we use Phil Steele for like a lot of our analysis. He usually does a very good job every year, and that's where we're getting a lot of our info from. So like on the O-line, their career starts drop a little bit, but they do have 3 guys back that started 7+ games last year. So it's not like they don't have any experience, but could be a little bit of a question mark. And if the O-line's not very good, then Utah might be a little unbalanced towards the defensive side of the ball. But if the O-line's very good, we know Huntley and Moss can be good, and then that could make this team a national player for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we feel very strongly about Utah. We like that team a lot. Let's move to, I would say, a pretty polarizing team in the USC Trojans. They always have the most talent in the conference, I feel like, on paper. Their head coach is dog shit, though. Clay Helton, he's not good. He's been there for 5 years, and he's just trash. But it's interesting this year. They are bringing in Graham Harrell, former Texas Tech quarterback, coordinator or quarterback coach, wherever the hell he was. I think he was at Texas Tech, actually, coaching also.
He was just at North Texas.
Okay, whatever. So he was in Texas somewhere. He's bringing the air raid to USC, which to me is blasphemy because USC is always known for their tailbacks. They always have a balanced attack. They're known for their running game. Their running game didn't exist last year, and that's part of why they were really bad. Now, the only thing that I'll give them, I think that USC fans, if there's such a thing, that they have a little bit of hope, is that the air raid could actually make them, I think, competitive in any game just because they have like 4 NFL wide receivers. And they have JT Daniels, who's a true frosh last year, which He looked like a true frosh, but he definitely has talent. So
Yeah.
I think there is potential for this team to do something, but I hate the head coach. But they do have a lot of talent. So like, I don't know. What do you think about USC? Is there a legitimate chance of them winning this division over Utah? Or is Utah that much better than they are?
I think USC is one of the contenders in the division, and I'm really interested to see what this offense looks like. And like you mentioned, there's no question this is the most talented team every single year in the Pac-12. That's one of the reasons why we rip on Clay Helton so much, like the fact that they went 5-7.
They went 5-7 last year.
That we're not talking about them automatically winning this division with as much talent as they have. Kind of tells you something about the coaching. But and if they didn't have Sam Darnold for a couple of years, he would have been fired 2 years ago.
I was about to say that Clay Helton is apparently 10-12 against the top 25 in his career. I remember last year we brought up a stat where he doesn't have Sam Darnold, he's like 1-11 against the top 25. So like when he doesn't have NFL top 3 pick.
Last 2 seasons, 8-18 against the spread.
Right, right. So I mean that's bad.
Yeah,
I mean that's not good.
But
you're at USC, like you should be really good.
It's really weird thinking about the air raid being at like an elite program like USC. We haven't seen that. They have the players to do it, so I really want to see how that looks because they do have elite receivers. JT Daniels has a lot of potential, being a second-year guy now.
Yeah, I mean they got Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean they've got 4 legit NFL receivers.
Yeah, they're so. It's going to be weird, and I think they've got talent on defense as well. They haven't played up to it, but like the talent is there.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, will they get the most out of it? How will this offense look like a new system year one? Those are the questions that.
I would say to wrap up SC as far like unless you have. Well, I'm going to ask you something in a second, but I think that. I think they're going to be too unbalanced towards the pass. And I think it's actually going to hurt the defense a little bit. And I'll ask you right now: is Clay Helton the head coach in 2020, 2020, whatever we want to call it?
I'm going to say, yeah.
Interesting.
So I know that not everyone agrees with that.
Yeah, I think he's going to be fired. They have a really hard schedule. Okay, they play, according to Phil Steele, the number 3 hardest schedule in the country. They draw Washington and Oregon out of the North. They're at Washington. They've got Fresno. The first game of the year is not a cake. Fresno's a good football team.
So out of conference, they got Fresno, BYU, and Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean those are at BYU.
A lot of the Pac-12 teams have pretty tough out of conference schedules too.
Right. So I mean, that's the thing about this conference this year is they all have most of them have pretty tough schedules. But I'll say right now that Steele, who's usually on the podcast, and then Corey from Denver, they both think Clay Helton's going to be fired this year. Steele has him fired. Probably I would say September 30th.
You know what? We'll talk about this at the end, but I could see him being fired easily, even if they win this division. I kind of just changed my mind on the fly there.
That's fine.
Because I think they could potentially win the division, but still go like 8-4, which could still get him fired.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Okay, well let's go ahead and move on. We don't like them, so whatever. All right, Arizona State. Herm Edwards, his second year, I think at times they kind of look surprisingly decent last year. Then at other times they look bad. I think there was just inconsistency, but it seems like the whole plan of him being like a CEO and then the coordinators kind of doing their thing. It actually seems like it's okay there. This team is weird to me because there's talent there. But I feel like on one Saturday I'm getting one team that is competitive with some of the better teams in the conference or nationally. But then on another Saturday I feel like they could lose to Colorado.
Yeah, which they did last year.
Right. So I like their running back Benjamin. They bring in a very highly touted quarterback in Jaden Daniels. He's gonna be a true freshman though. So that's gonna be interesting in itself. But I mean they do get 7 starters back on defense this year. The offense should be decently potent. Schedule is actually pretty manageable within the conference, I think. How do you feel about Arizona State? Are they actually a contender in the or in the division, or what do you think?
They're in this middle group, I think, where it's like
crapshoot.
Them,
like
Arizona State, Arizona, UCLA. It's kind of like all those teams I see as kind of similar in terms of like what they're going to do, like what their potential is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't see them being a contender in the division really.
Okay. I mean, they're going to be a bowl team, I think.
Yeah.
But
I see them as like, they won 7 games last year. I see them doing like something similar, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say about Arizona State. I mean,
I don't have much.
Okay.
UCLA. Like, the next team is much more interesting, in my opinion.
Yeah, UCLA is very interesting. Chip Kelly, we talked about this last year. I think on the pod, we all felt within 3 to 5 years that Chip Kelly would have UCLA as a contender in this conference. They bring back 19 starters this year, and they're in the second year of. I think the program is used to the scheme changes, which are pretty dramatic when Chip Kelly comes into a program usually. But the one thing I say that could hold UCLA back is their schedule is pretty brutal. They're at Cincy week 1, home against San Diego State week 2, home against Oklahoma, and then at Washington State, at Arizona. They could start 0-5.
Exactly. Another tough out-of-conference schedule for Pac-12 team, yeah.
Yeah, but...
and a lot of these teams have really tough openings, too.
Yes. However, with 19 starters back, I think there being some talent in the cupboard, this team probably has a little bit of potential to surprise. And like you said, it's the middling teams in this conference that, is surprise going to be them finishing second in the conference? Because, I don't know, I feel like Utah's actually a decent amount better than USC this year, but I could see UCLA finishing second. What do you think about UCLA this year? Are they going to go bowling? Are they going to actually surprise and actually be a contender possibly?
Corey mentioned today that this was his surprise team, I think, for the conference.
Yeah.
And I agree with him on that this is a team that has potential to like break out.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a team that, last year they went 3-9. I think they'll be much improved this year. Bringing in Chip Kelly, completely new system like that, it's going to take a little bit of time to adjust to that.
Yeah.
They were a very young team last year, had a lot of freshmen, sophomores starting. So this year, all those starters are back.
Yeah.
They returned a ton.
They did beat USC last year.
They did beat USC.
That's not saying a lot, but they still beat.
They really struggled early in the season.
They were not competitive.
The rest of the way, for the most part, they played better. They had like a 2-game stretch where they got destroyed by Oregon and Utah. But besides that, in Pac-12 play, they played pretty well.
Yeah.
And being Chip Kelly's second year, if they can keep that going, I think, it's a team that could be like 6-6, like 7-5, but they're also a team that could. Yeah. They're a team that could drastically exceed expectations.
Right.
I think.
Right.
Like more than some of these other teams.
Yeah. I mean, I think they could go 3-9 again, but be a lot better
exactly.
than what they were. Like
there's a wide range of win totals that this team could like fall in.
It's going to be interesting. They do have that Dorian Thompson Robinson back, which I think he looked like a true freshman last year, but he fits what Chip Kelly wants to do. I think his growth is going to be the biggest factor for them. But yeah, tough schedule, a team that could certainly surprise. There goes the Cuts. Moving on to Arizona. So another team that I actually find decently interesting. I've never been a big Kevin Sumlin fan, but this is similar to UCLA in my opinion. Now, they bring back 15 starters. They bring back Khalil Tate, who was hurt most of the year with an ankle injury, which a big part of his game is being a dual threat quarterback. He was labeled as a big-time Heisman contender last year preseason, and he just didn't get there because I think mainly of the health. But on defense, they are going to be actually pretty decent. They have 8 starters back. They've got some NFL potential there, and then they mainly have Khalil Tate on offense, who's going to be electric if he's healthy. What do we think about Arizona? Is this, like we said, I think we agree they're probably in the same ballpark as like UCLA, Arizona State.
Yeah.
They could surprise. They could finish second.
Yeah, it's another team that could surprise. last year a little bit of a disappointment, and a lot of that was because of Khalil Tate not being able to duplicate what he did the year before.
Yeah.
And some of that had to do with the fact that he wasn't healthy the entire year. I mean, he went from about like 1,500 rushing yards down to about like 200. So that's a huge drop off in production that they just weren't able to make up.
Right.
They have a really good running back too, J.J.
Taylor's
Taylor.
very good, yeah.
I mean, if both those guys are healthy, that's a great 1-2 punch they have.
Yeah.
And if Tate is healthy, that just opens up their entire offense.
Right.
Their defense has been terrible the last few years. Maybe finally they get the shittiness of a Rich Rod defense out of their system and they can actually play. Hold teams under 30 points per game. So
I want to clarify.
If they can do that. Then,
I didn't mean like they're going to be improved. I don't know if they'll be good, but maybe they'll be good enough to where like
no,
the offense
could
take
be.
care
Yeah,
of
yeah, they could be. Yeah, they bring back a bunch of guys. They're kind of. Like I said, Rich Rod's always kind of
he sucks.
Sucks at defense.
They also have true freshman Booby Curry at wide receiver. Pretty high recruit, great name, Booby Curry.
Yeah.
So I mean Arizona. Like we said, these three teams in the middle: Arizona State, UCLA, Arizona. They all are pretty similar. I think they all could finish second.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Maybe one of them
true.
Shocks us and they win the division. I don't think that's going to happen, but they definitely could.
Yeah, if USC struggles again, then any of these teams could jump up to second, I think. Yeah.
All right, last team in the South. This is not going to take long. Colorado, like we said, they bring in Mel Tucker, first year head coach here. I mean, Colorado has a few nice players. Chenault at receiver, Montez at quarterback. I mean, those are pretty talented players, but this team has a very hard schedule. They just are clearly less talented than the other teams in the division. I would say that I wouldn't be shocked if they weren't in the basement of this division, but I think that's where they finished this year. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean they're gonna probably finish down there.
Okay. They're not like
just not enough talent. First year head coach. Last year they started 5-0 and they were actually ranked 18th, and then they just completely fell off the map.
They lost every
pretty
game
much when they lost 7 straight.
Yeah.
Resulting in what's his name getting fired, and then
Mike McIntyre. Yeah.
McIntyre.
Who was coach of the year 2 years ago.
Right. Yeah. That's how quickly things can change in this division.
What have you done for me lately? All right. Yeah. So in this, we'll get back to our predictions after, but yeah, that's the South. We're gonna move on to the North now. Start with the Oregon Ducks. I would say this is a very similar prognosis to Utah. I think that this is probably like one of your co-favorites in the conference. They bring back 10 starters on offense. According to Phil Steele, this might be the best offensive line in the country. They bring back Justin Herbert, who is almost undoubtedly going to be a first-round NFL draft pick next year. Defense, they also bring back 7 players back. And with Oregon, we always question line play. We question the defense a little bit. But it seems like offensive line clearly is going to be elite. And defense, by all accounts, is probably going to be a top 25 defense. So I think a pretty manageable schedule overall. I mean, here's the thing with Oregon. This is where I have a little bit of pause, and I'll see what you think. But the last few years, they have been pretty bad away from Autzen. A lot of their toughest games are away from Autzen this year. How do you feel about Oregon? Are they definitely the North favorite? Do you agree that they're probably like a co-favorite with Utah in the conference?
You brought up a great point with the away schedule. And,
that's what I do. I bring up great points.
Yeah, exactly. The last couple of years they have not been good away from Autzen, and a lot of their biggest games of the year are away from home.
Yeah.
So, but besides that, I think that the more I've read about Oregon, actually, the more I've liked Oregon.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about the O-line. That always gets my attention. They should have a really good O-line. This is rated the most experienced team in the country, according to Phil Steele.
153 combined career starts in the O-line. That's the most in FBS since 2011.
Yeah. They have,
and Cristobal has tougher teams. Like this isn't like Helfrich, like the little turtle guy.
Right.
Like sitting next to Urban.
Yeah.
Like
another year 2 head coach here. Herbert is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I'm not sold on him being like a top 10 pick yet, but he definitely is at the college level of a really good player.
Well, I remember agreeing with you. Like I was a little questionable on him, I guess, because I saw 58% completion percentage. But then when I dug a little deeper, his wide receivers dropped. 50 plus passes.
Well, that's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
So adjust that.
Yeah.
But,
no, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. The talent level is good. I would not say it's elite. It's like,
I mean, like, yeah, it's like in the teens.
Exactly. It's like the 10.
Team,
it's like the 10 to 15 range. It's not the kind of talent level that you expect to win a national championship. But in this conference, they could be a contender to like make the playoff at the end, I think.
Right.
The interesting thing about this team, besides Herbert, there aren't a lot of big names on this team.
Yeah.
But it is a very experienced team.
Yeah, I agree. I think that just based off the last few years, like we've had trouble on this podcast saying that we felt like a Pac-12 team was like a national title contender. I think Washington a couple of years ago we felt like was a pretty strong team, but then we started to realize Jake Browning's just like a bitch.
Yeah.
And we'll get to Washington in a second because I think they're interesting. But I really like this team a lot. I agree with Addison. This is the thing that's funny is like Corey's been talking about Oregon for like months, and I knew for the most part, like they brought back Herbert. I knew they were bringing back some players. I didn't realize how good the offensive line was, and I didn't realize that most importantly to me, for a Pac-12 team, that they actually are a team that's going to play a little bit of defense. And so here's the thing: if they win the Pac-12 and they make the playoff, this is the kind of team that if there is enough playmaking ability around Herbert, that they could hit lightning in a bottle and win 2 games. Like, so I don't know.
That Auburn game is so big for the entire conference.
Yeah, I mean, they've had a few more than a few chances to showcase the conference on a national stage.
Yep.
And they've just haven't done
Last year, Washington losing to Auburn. First game of the year was devastating for them, especially since
they played well and they should have won the game.
Yeah, they should have won that game.
Red zone, they were terrible.
They had a ton of chances to win.
Yeah, but Browning sucks. So
and they lost that game, and then that was basically the Pac-12's playoff chances.
Right, that was it. So yeah, we really like Oregon a lot. We'll see at the end of the pod where we pick them. But moving on to Washington. So speaking of Browning being gone, they have transfer from Georgia, Jacob Eason. He was the #1 quarterback in his recruiting class. Big fucking rocket arm. The question is, he was he played like a freshman at times at Georgia, a little inaccurate at times. I think that gets better with time. Apparently, all of last year when he was running scout team, he was doing all the right things. I actually think he's going to be really good for them. But this is an interesting team because they're always, I think, one of the better defensive teams in the conference. They only have 2 returning starters on defense this year. They lost a lot of NFL talent the last 2 years on defense, and it's going to be interesting for this team because I would not be surprised if this team actually won the division and won the conference, but I could also see this team actually finishing a few spots down in this division. So what do you think of Washington? Do you think the coaching can overcome like the lack of experience? Do you think Eason's going to be better? I think Eason's going to be better than Browning. I'll tell you that right now. But what do you think?
Well, I agree with you there. And the coaching is key, too. We were talking about before. We think Chris Peterson is definitely the best coach in the conference.
Yeah. If he's not the best coach, he's right
he gets the most. He gets the most out of his players. I agree that Eason is an upgrade over Browning. It's been a while since we've seen Eason, but he definitely has more talent.
Well, and I'll point this out real quick, too, that saying somebody's better than Browning isn't really saying much. Like, my little sister's better than Browning, but, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, well, usually when you lose, a 4-year starter at quarterback, you think that's a big hit to you, but we don't think that at least that aspect of this team is going to be hurt that much.
Noodle arm. He sucks, dude.
Yeah. The thing is, this defense, it's been an elite defense, the past 4 years.
Really fucking good, yeah.
They have shown the ability before to reload, but this is going to be the toughest task so far, in Peterson's tenure here, of reloading the defense. They lost a lot of guys.
Yeah, they did.
So I think their schedule shakes out favorably. That
it does.
It definitely makes them. I think they probably take a step back in terms of actual what their ceiling is, but they're still definitely a contender for this conference.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's unfortunate for them that they draw Utah and Oregon doesn't, because that could be the game difference. But the thing is, they have been really good at home, and they get
Utah the thing. The Utah game is at home,
and it's off a bye.
Yeah.
And Utah, I think, who does Utah have the week before? Because that's usually a pretty. They have Cal. Cal will play tough, but I mean that's whatever. But the point is, yeah, there's a lot of inexperience, so I think it's a little hard to project where they might finish. If Clay Helton was the coach of Washington, I'd pick him like fourth in this.
Oh yeah,
easily. That's the thing. We're holding them up.
Yeah, they'd be
because of
terrible.
coaching.
They'd be like 5-7.
I agree with you. I think this team can win the division and the conference. But we'll see at the end where we pick them. But they're an interesting team to me. Stanford Cardinal. Moving on to them. I mean, this is another team that I'll tell you right now that I'll just, I guess, spill the beans. I think Stanford, I agree with Corey from Denver that I actually think Stanford's going to implode this year. There's a few reasons why. David Shaw, who I actually used to, I don't know, maybe I underrate him. I'll get your opinion on Shaw in a minute, but I don't like how predictable they have been almost always. But the thing is, they've had the personnel to do what they want to do, if that makes sense. Like they impose their will on the line, both sides in that conference, and they haven't been able to do that the last couple of years. The problem I have this year is, once again, I don't feel like the line's going to be overly strong. So I don't feel like the running game is going to be overly strong. They're going to have to rely on Costello, who I actually think KJ Costello is actually a pretty good quarterback. But they lose JJ Arcega-Whiteside, which is a big part of their vertical passing game.
They're gonna rely more on Costello's arm than they have the last few years, because they've always been a run heavy team.
Yeah.
Last year that kind of fell apart. Like the O-line, shockingly,
they're very
took
hurt,
a huge
but very
step back.
bad. Also, Love was hurt.
The whole running game just was a mess. But surprisingly, they do this sometimes. Like they struggle early in the season, and you think that
they're gone,
and then they end up with 9 wins. You know, so just like they surprise you at the end of the year. You look up and you're surprised by the record.
Here's the thing, and I'm going to try to be as open-minded as I can about this. I don't love that Shaw just hands it to the running back on first down every play. And like it's so predictable. Here's the thing. Think about this, okay? Stanford's had decent recruiting while USC was under probation, while Oregon or who else was in the I don't know.
I've been surprised that they've been able to keep up what they had been doing recruiting wise for a while.
It hasn't been amazing, but it's been okay. But think about this. Still at Stanford, where like they do have academic standards, it is going to be a little harder. David Shaw is 10-9 against the top 10, 25-15 against the top 25. All right, that is pretty good.
Yeah.
But the last few years, he's fallen out of favor with me. I don't like how they've played. It's been predictable. And here's the thing. He is going to be stubborn and he wants his teams to be physical and impose their will on the line. He wants to run the ball, which I love. That's what I want my team to do. But they're not going to be able to do that this year. And their schedule is tough. They've got, and we're not even just talking about their Pac-12 schedule. They've got Northwestern game 1, which I think they could lose. I've already bet Northwestern. They're at USC game 2, at UCF game 3, Oregon at home game 4.
Yeah, that's rough.
I mean, and they get a break with Oregon State, but then they play Washington. So like their first 6 games, I mean that's good. I mean they could easily just be like 500. They could be worse than that.
Yeah,
so
they could. And this Stanford team definitely. This is, I believe they have the most Pac-12 wins of any team in the last 10 years.
I think they do. But yeah, I'll double check.
This could be the worst Stanford team that we've seen in that time frame.
They do. They have the most wins last 10 years, last 5 years. So I mean, look, I'll give Shaw credit.
On paper, I think that this is the worst Stanford team in a while.
Yeah.
The expectations are definitely lower. You always think of them as being really good on defense too. I don't see that as much either this year.
Yeah, I think they're going to be middle of the road. This could implode on them, and he's not going to get fired. I mean, he's done more than what anybody's done at Stanford, but I mean, I don't know. I just don't see them being a contender in this
I agree with you. Yeah, I pretty much have the same thoughts there.
Okay.
Also, Phil, just a side note, Phil Steele lists David Shaw as number 1 coach in the Pac-12, which we don't really agree with.
Yeah,
we think like Peterson's clearly the best coach. You and I.
I think Chris Peterson is the best coach. I think Kyle Whittingham is definitely up there. I think Chip Kelly is closer up there. I don't get this. I like Justin Wilcox at Cal a lot, and he has him at 10.
Yeah, so do I.
Not sure about that. And he's got Mike Leach at 4, which I mean, I can see you arguing Leach is the best coach in the conference.
Yeah,
but
me too. Yeah, and so we'll talk about.
Speaking of Mike Leach,
too.
yeah, great transition. Washington State Cougars 11-2 last year, very surprising team. Mike Leach always seems to get the most out of his system, out of his talent that he has there. It's a very quarterback friendly system, like we talked about at the beginning of the pod. He brought in Gardner Minshew last year.
I said when we were talking about Washington that Peterson gets the most out of his guys. Mike Leach does too. Yeah, they're both up there. So
yeah, we like the Pirate. Again this year, another incoming transfer quarterback that is apparently, from what I've read, much more talented than the mustache Gardner Minshew. Gage, I don't know how to pronounce it. Gubrud.
Right,
we're gonna go with
we'll find out.
We're just gonna go with Gage. But this transfer quarterback from Eastern Washington, he is apparently more talented. He's got a lot more arm talent than Minshew, which that could be a big deal for a Mike Leach offense. And I think their defense is going to fall back a little bit. They had been actually pretty decent on defense the last couple of years. It wasn't great, but it was good enough. But this team, it's a reasonable schedule. Here's the problem. We talk about reasonable schedule overall, but we're talking about just Pac-12 overall, right? They have at Utah, at Oregon, at Washington. They have the best 3 teams in the Pac-12 on the road.
Yeah.
So that is going to be problematic. But unlike Stanford, I think that this is your surprise team in the division. I think this team could win the division. It's unlikely because of the away schedule in the Pac-12. Yeah. But I think this team, if that kid's as good as they say he is, I think this team can win the division.
Yeah, the road slate is tough, and they have 5 road games in the Pac-12. So that's always an interesting thing about these odd numbered conference slates is some of the teams are going to have more away games, which gives them a little bit of disadvantage.
Right.
The Pirate, he always surprises you. This transfer guy, obviously, we have never seen him play, so it's mostly what we're talking about him is just things we've read. But he comes from a program, Eastern Washington, that his transition into this offense, I think, will be pretty good. It's a program that throws the ball a lot. It's been an elite FCS program.
He's a 2-time Walter Payton finalist. It's the FCS version of the Heisman.
Yeah, it's a program that's played well against Pac-12 teams.
Yeah,
and other FBS teams. Their quarterbacks transfer up to FBS, and I do think Minshew had a great year last year, I think this guy. Definitely on paper, if you look at Minshew before he had played a game at Washington State, this guy has more talent.
Yeah.
And he's got a good group of receivers to throw to. So I don't think they'll have any problems offensively.
Right.
So typical Washington State, they're going to be solid.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they've got a shot. The schedule's tough. I wouldn't be shocked if they lost 4 games in the Pac-12 this year, and they were only like a 7 or 8 win team. But
they should still be a solid team.
Yeah, they're going to be competitive no matter what. That's for sure. So, all right, we love Mike Leach. We like Washington State. Cal Golden Bears. I mean, we were talking about this before the pod. It breaks my heart that they I don't know why. I like Will Cox. I think his teams play. From what I've watched them, they play tough, man, and I feel bad for this team. Now, I'm not gonna say I was about to say they're fans. They do not have fans. Those don't exist. They do not have fans.
Yeah, I remember
if you're watching this pod, you're not a Cal fan. Don't lie to me.
When Ohio State played there 5 years ago, we had 80% of the stadium.
Oh yeah, easily. OSU. Yeah, it's just OSU alumni out in San Francisco. But I do feel bad for Will Cox and the program that they just don't have enough on offense this year. They might be improved from last year. That's not saying much, but holy shit, their defense for being a Pac-12 team, they're going to be possibly one of the best defenses in the country. The problem is I think they're going to be on the field a lot, and I think they're still going to go up points just because they're going to get tired. They're going to be on the field. It reminds me of Sparty last year, Michigan State. Yeah. They're just it's a good defense.
It's a very similar team to Sparty.
Yeah.
Offense is terrible. Defense is really good.
Yeah, it's almost like the poor man's version of Sparty, I would say.
Yeah, but a little worse.
Their secondary might be the best in the country, though.
Yeah,
seriously. And Will Cox is doing a really good job. I mean, he inherited zero talent.
He's a defensive-minded guy.
Yeah.
And ever since he took over this program, like it's shown, like they've been pretty good on defense, and they were really good last year. And you mentioned like their offense, not helping out the defense. They gave up 20 points per game.
Yeah.
I think their defense was really better than that. Like they're
they
in
are.
like half their games, they held teams to like under 300 yards.
Yeah.
This is a really fascinating team because their offense scored 17 or less in 7 of their games. And they
so bad.
Just with that stat alone, you would think they won like 2 games.
Right.
They won 7 games.
Yeah.
If this team had a mediocre offense, they could have won 10 games last year. Like, here are some of the scores of their games. 12-10, 19-13, 15-14, 10-7 in the bowl game, which is one of the worst offensive games I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, the Cheez-It Bowl.
And they lost a
bad.
game. They lost a game to Arizona, 24-17, a game which they gave them 2 pick sixes. So the entire reason they lost the game was because of their offense.
Right.
Yeah, but the defense, them and Utah are clearly the 2 best defenses in this conference. I think that Cal might be the best defense.
Yeah, I think they very possibly are with Utah. I mean, if they catch lightning in a bottle on offense, this team could be a surprise team. But that is asking a lot. Their offense is not going to be good.
Yeah, I agree. The offense.
I think they're going to finish pretty much where Phil has them. I think they're going to be pretty much 5th, and get some recruits in there. Maybe next year, hopefully. I would say by the 5th year, though, this could be a contender in this division. If he keeps up what he's doing on defense, we could see Cal being a contender.
Yeah, it's asking too much to expect the offense to be a lot better than last year, but like give it some time, give it a few years, it could be a lot better program.
Yeah, I mean he just inherited nothing. So, all right. Oh God. All
last
right,
team. We saved the best for last right here.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Oregon State. Addison, this team's gonna be really fucking bad. I'm trying to think of positives, not to be like a huge dick, but they have a really tough schedule. Will
they beat Cal Poly? That's the question.
I don't know. Maybe they do have. All right, let's look at the positive. They have 16 starters back. Now, here's the thing. Yeah. We've talked about this on this pod, damn it. Returning starters doesn't mean shit if they're terrible starters. So, they should be better. Experience does matter. And you're in the second year. We talked about this, second-year head coaches. You've got Jonathan Smith there. He's a quarterback there. I don't even know who he is, but it doesn't matter.
I remember him playing.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The point is, they should be there. Now, they actually were a pretty decent running team. Now, it's not saying much. They blasted OSU on the ground. That's not saying much last year.
Over the course of the entire year, they were an explosive team on the ground. They had a couple good running backs.
Yeah.
I'm going to give them another positive. Their quarterback is tall.
He is very tall. And he is... that's about it. I'm not going to say anything else about it.
They have... I'm looking at the roster. They have a lot of transfers.
Yeah.
A lot of guys from Nebraska. There's like Mike Riley, like leftovers.
That's not good. This team's going to finish last in the division. And...
yeah,
I don't know if they win more than 2 games, to be honest. I don't know why we're spending this much time on this. Like, they're going to be terrible.
Because we're making fun of them.
Yeah, they're going to be terrible.
I feel bad for them. I'm rooting for this program.
No, you're not. Let's move on. We're going to move on to...
2 wins is like their max, I think.
They're going to be trash. So, let's move on to...
the overall big picture.
Yeah, overall big picture for we're going to have division winners. One surprise team that we feel like could win the division that nobody's really thinking about, or maybe a few people are thinking about. Another added thing that I just thought of, maybe we have like some Heisman contenders in this conference.
Yeah, the best players.
Let's start with best players. Let's say, so in the North, I think that Justin Herbert's clearly like probably the Heisman contender. A couple of my surprise guys are going to be the transfer for Washington State, that Gage, whatever. And
Gage, the quarterback.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to say... KJ Costello as maybe a dark horse Heisman contender, just because I think they're going to throw the ball a lot.
Yeah.
Anybody in the North you like besides that, that you feel like could be a contender?
In the North,
yeah.
besides Herbert, I'd say we'll see what Jake Eason does.
Yeah,
You
that's the
know,
only
as
other
another
one.
guy.
Yeah, I'll let you start the South since I stole everybody from the North.
Yeah, the
so.
South. You could really pick any of the USC receivers. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown the most.
Yeah.
I think he has the most talent out of all those
Yeah,
guys.
I agree.
Benjamin from Arizona State.
Yeah.
He should have a big year. Two guys from Arizona, Khalil Tate, if he can bounce back, and J.J. Taylor, the running back.
I'll make this will be my little bold prediction for the South. I think, well, I guess we'll get to the macro look with Arizona, but I think Khalil Tate's going to actually be in the Heisman picture at the end of
All
it.
right.
I think he's going to be healthy and he's going to do a little something electric. But let's go with the South. I'll let you start with your pick to win the South, and we'll give all three of the other guys in the pod their picks as well. After I'll do that in between Addison and I.
Okay.
Give me your pick, your winner. Give me a team though give me one team that you think could win that you feel like not a lot of people are picking, like they're kind of lower in the books.
The surprise, I would go with UCLA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then your winner.
We talked about them being like, there's a lot of directions their season could go, especially with the way they opened the season.
Mm-hmm.
But they have the most surprise potential, I'd say.
Yeah.
As far as division winner, it's definitely between Utah and USC to me. USC kind of just because of the talent. Will they play up to it? That's the question.
Yeah.
I thought about this. I was going back and forth. I think Utah, there's a good chance they are the best team, but I'm picking USC.
Wow. That's surprising.
They get that game at home. If it was at Utah, I would definitely pick Utah. I think the winner of that game wins the division.
Wow.
I don't think it's a great USC team, like I was saying earlier.
Right.
They could go 8-4 and still win this division.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if they beat Utah, then they have a great shot at winning the division. They get that game at home. That's kind of what sets it over the top for me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And is it more? Is that
and
more
at the
just
same
is
time-
that more just because it's not at Utah, or like because the Coliseum?
This division, it's a crazy division. It seems like a different team wins it every year.
Yeah.
I just don't want to pick Utah
Okay.
again to win the division.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna give a few. I'll give an affiliate of the pod, a few of the pod members, I guess. Steele likes Utah. I don't think he gave a surprise team necessarily, but I'm sure he would say any one of these junk teams possibly. He likes Utah. Corey from Denver likes Utah. His surprise team is also UCLA. So we seems to be some love for Chip Kelly in year 2 at UCLA. I don't think we got a pick from Tolman actually.
He said.
Did he say anything? All right. Well, I can.
He said
go
the
on
Pac-12 is a joke. Or
yeah, he
like
did
that.
say it's a conference. Wait a minute. Yeah, let's mention.
Tolman said, discussing an irrelevant conference such as the Pac-12 is not worth my hourly rate. so that's Tolman's input on this podcast.
Yeah, that's fair. That's his Pac-12 input.
It's not worth Tolman's time. So
Brian J.
The Pac-12 has to get better. Maybe if they get better next year, it'll be worth Tolman's time.
Yeah, they can prove it this year. Brian J. from Sunbury, he likes Utah in the South. I'll start with my surprise team. I am going to.
I gotta be the guy who doesn't pick Utah because we can't have a
Everybody's gonna pick
unanimous
Utah.
pick in this division.
It's almost
too,
gonna be
it's too fluid.
You know what? Here, I'll give you a little something. My surprise team is going to be Arizona. I don't know if that was like a spoiler because I picked Khalil Tate to be a Heisman finalist at the end of the year, but I'm going to say Arizona actually finishes second in this division, which, like, shoot me in the head. I don't know if that's going to actually happen.
I mean,
but,
it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah,
either.
but
just like it wouldn't shock me if my predicted champion of this division ends up tanking.
Arizona, I know they have been really bad on defense the last couple of years, but they do bring back a lot of players on defense, and they are in the second year of like a new coaching staff. I don't love Sumlin like everybody else does, but I do think Khalil Tate's going to be really good. J.J. Taylor, dual threat on the ground. I mean, I think they're going to do some things offensively that it's going to be exciting. I think they are going to finish second. I am going to pick Utah. I think this team's very talented. I love the defensive line. I think they're going to do enough on offense to, in fact, win the South. So let's go to the North. I'll let you start again. Give me your surprise team that could win the division, and then give me your actual winner.
Surprise team, I'm going to say Washington State.
Yeah.
They always seem to be the surprise team.
Yeah.
In this division, especially last year, even though they didn't win the division, them going 11-2 was a big deal.
Yeah.
It's another two-team race, in my opinion, between Oregon and Washington. Not really shocking.
Mm-hmm.
I think Oregon's the clear favorite in the conference. I've seen a lot of books putting Oregon and Washington at the same odds.
Yeah.
Which I understand because Washington, I think, has the easier path
schedule
to the championship, and with Oregon's struggles on the road, them having a tougher road schedule makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. If Oregon but I definitely think Oregon is the better team. They play at Washington, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think it's at Washington, but I do think Oregon's the better team, and I'm picking Oregon.
Yeah.
The most experienced team in the conference, the best quarterback in the conference. So I think that's the safe pick to go. And with this conference, if they play better on the road and if they win that huge game week 1, they could potentially be playing for the playoff at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I don't think they will.
Okay.
Or I'm not saying I don't think they'll not beat Auburn, but I see them more as like a 10-2 type team. I don't think if they beat Auburn and lose one game the rest of the way, they could be in that discussion.
See, what's going to be interesting this year is I think the whole 10-2 conference champion, that could happen in a few different conferences. We'll see.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that later on. But, yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair prognosis, I guess you would call it. But so Corey from Denver likes Oregon a lot. He has them winning the division. Steele has Oregon as well. If I had to guess, I would say Steele thinks that Washington State is the surprise team. He loves Mike Leach.
Yeah, he loves the Pirate.
I mean, I honestly think we'd be hard pressed to find anybody that picks like another like Corey thinks Stanford's going to implode. So like, are we really picking Cal or Oregon State to win the division as a surprise team? No.
If Cal played any offense whatsoever,
they could.
I would put them as a
like if Cal had like a NFL quarterback, I would say Cal is definitely is up there for that.
Yeah.
But Brian J from Sunbury likes Oregon as well. Same as him. I like Washington State as a surprise team. I actually think they could win this division. I think it's unlikely though. That's why I'm picking them as a surprise team. I definitely think it's a 2-team race. Wouldn't be shocked if Washington won it. They do have the easier path. However, I do think Oregon is the better team. I think Cristobal is going to have them playing pretty physically tough, and Oregon's been really lacking that forever. So I am going with Oregon. I agree with Addison. I think that it's definitely very possible that this team could be a playoff contender by the end of the year. We'll see week 1 when they play Auburn, but and that's just week 1, but it could be telling. As far as who's going to win the actual conference now, so you have Oregon versus USC. And we'll recap this real quick. But Steele, Corey, Brian, Jay, and I all have Utah versus Oregon. So I'll start with you. Who wins, Oregon or USC? Who's taking down the Pac-12?
It's definitely Oregon for me. Or Oregon's like the clear favorite.
I think they're a unanimous pick.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, I had Utah versus Washington for the longest time. But when I started reading up more on Oregon, I just like them more and more. I think you could flip a coin in a game with Oregon and Utah. I think they're almost like evenly matched talent-wise. I'm going to side with the better quarterback in the matchup. I think that's the most important position on the field, and I think Herbert's a lot better than Huntley. I think Huntley's okay, but I'm going to go with Oregon. As far as so I guess you're thinking that USC is not going to be a playoff contender if they make the
No, I don't think so. I expect them to lose to Notre Dame, so that's going to be a big hit anyway. And they'll probably drop a couple games in conference. Besides that.
Because I think if Washington gets to the title game, I'm not sure. I don't know. With their path, that means maybe they won a lot of games. I think Oregon and Utah. We try to do this every year when we do these conference previews. We try to say how many teams are playoff contenders. I think there's 2. I think Utah and Oregon are both actually playoff contenders this year, but because I'm picking Oregon, I think that's the team that could make. Now, we're not going to give our playoff picks yet. We do that whole pod later on down the road here in probably like a month or two. But if Oregon wins the Pac-12, they're winning a Power 5 conference. I think they're definitely a playoff contender. So
yeah, Oregon. Yeah, I've got Oregon as like the only team I think that is going to be competing at the end of the year. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty much it. I think we covered it. I mean, clearly we feel like Oregon and Utah are two of the better teams, although you have USC surprising in the South and taking it down, I think.
Yeah.
Washington, Washington State, we both feel like could
Clay Helton could still get fired, too.
Could still definitely get fired. But yeah, so tune in next time. At the next conference we're going to cover is going to be the Big 12. I think it's tradition that we always start Pac-12, Big 12, and then we go from there. Although we could have honestly started with the ACC this year. It's going to be the worst conference, I think.
Yeah,
it's bad. That's going
to be the most boring preview.
Yeah, if you guys were going to skip a pod of ours, which you never should, you would skip the ACC pod. But yeah, so that's going to wrap it up for the Pac-12. We all seem to like the Oregon Ducks this year. Feel like they're definitely the cream of the crop, and we'll see you guys next time for the Big 12 pod.
43 days away.
Boom.